Now that Kelly has shared the rest of getting the steps to victory and its importance, the part that I was going to be sharing today for Iron Sharpeneth Iron is having to do with something we've been discussing all quarter long, and that's the book of Hebrews. I've been finding that the book of Hebrews is a special book. I think it's a special book for us when you read it. Aside from the fact that the book of Hebrews was written to the Christians then in preparation for the destruction of Jerusalem. Paul was trying to encourage them. You know, they were going through a time. So the letter to the Hebrews came just before the destruction of Jerusalem. So let's see. Let me see if I can hit this. Okay. All right. And so I'm just going to speed through the slides. So in the book of Hebrews, we were learning about the fact that in chapter 1, Paul was telling us that Jesus is the one who is speaking to us in these last days. And it says, God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in times past. Oh, so you can see. Yes, I can see. Thank you. And in diverse manners spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets, have in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he, God the Father, hath appointed heir, Jesus being the heir of all things, by whom Jesus also made the world. So it was Jesus who made the world. And so right in the beginning of chapter 1, he is establishing the fact that it's Jesus. Jesus is God. He did this. And then the very next verses say, who being the brightness of his, God the Father's glory, and the express or exact, having the exact characteristics of his, God the Father's person, and upholding all things by the word of Jesus's power, when he, Jesus, had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty, God the Father on high, being made so much better than the angels, as he, Jesus, had by inheritance obtained a more excellent name than they. Than who? The angels. And so you're reading this, and it's like, why is the author even mentioning the angels and distinguishing that Jesus has a better name than the angels? And it reminded me of this statement from the Spirit of Prophecy in Patriarchs and Prophets. The King of the universe summoned the heavenly hosts before him, that in their presence he might set forth the true position of his Son and show the relation he sustained to all created beings. The Son of God shared the Father's throne, and the glory of the eternal self-existent one encircled both. About the throne gathered the holy angels, a vast unnumbered throng, 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands, the most exalted angels as ministers and subjects, rejoicing in the light that fell upon them from the presence of the deity. Before the assembled inhabitants of heaven, the King declared that none but Christ, the only begotten of God, could fully enter into his purposes, and to him it was committed to execute the mighty counsels of his will. The Son of God had wrought the Father's will in the creation of all the hosts of heaven, and to him, as well as to God, their homage and allegiance were due. Christ was still to exercise divine power in the creation of the earth and its inhabitants. But in all this, he would not seek power or exaltation for himself, contrary to God's plan, but would exalt the Father's glory and execute his purposes of beneficence and love. So from that, I can understand, now I understand why Sister White wrote this, because when you're looking at the book of Hebrews, it seems like they're trying to show that, you know, the angels at first, if you read the paragraphs before paragraph 2 of page 36, there's this situation that implies the angels were working with Christ, but not realizing that Jesus was God. So they're working with him, but not really knowing who he is, so much so that God had to say, let me tell you a little bit more about, you know, the one that stands next to me. He's not like Lucifer. They're not the same. That's the reason why Lucifer can't come with me and discuss what we're going to do in behalf of earth, because he's God, but Lucifer is not. And so this is what set, the wheels in motion. And in the book of Hebrews, he's letting us know that Jesus is the one that God is speaking through in these last days. He is not an angel, but in fact, when we go into chapter 2, he is not an angel, but he actually became lower than an angel. He became a human, because we are created what? We are created a little lower than the angels. And I can't go into everything, but just in summation, Hebrews 2, Jesus is not an angel, he became a man. And this is how, as Seventh-day Adventists, we can understand that Jesus was God, but he became a man like us. And all of this builds up to what our whole thing and theme that we were trying to learn about Christ this entire quarter. And that is that, and so there's more evidence. So now Paul in Hebrews 3 says he was as faithful to God as Moses was faithful to the church, and as Moses was faithful to the children of Israel. And Hebrews chapter 3 goes over that time when after they sent out the spies, only 2 came back saying, we can do this. And the other ones were afraid. And they said, and Hebrews 3 says, don't be like those of unbelief in this time. In fact, they fell away because they didn't believe. And that's basically the end of 3. Harden not your hearts as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness. And then take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from believing the living God. But exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through what? The deceitfulness of sin. So sin hardens the heart and makes you not believe. So it's kind of like what Kelly's talking about. When you hang on to sin, you lose faith, because guilt kind of nullifies your faith. And so it says, harden not your hearts as in the provocation, and to whom swear here that they should not enter into his rest, but to them that believe not. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief, because Caleb and Joshua were ready, but everybody else were not ready. So we know that after 40 years, the only ones who went in were Caleb and Joshua, and the rest of them, they died in the wilderness. So Hebrews chapter 4 is about the rest of the Sabbath, and I cannot forget that, because the 4th commandment is about rest on the Sabbath. And so so Hebrews chapter 4 talks about a lot about the Sabbath, but I like how it says, for in verses 8 to 11, which is kind of like where the Sabbath commandment is Exodus 20 verses 8 to 11. For if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works, as did God from his. And Kelly was talking about righteousness by faith, not by works. And when we enter into God's rest, it's not by our works, it's by resting in Jesus. So they didn't get to enter into the Canaan land because of their unrighteous works. It says, for he that is entered into his rest, he hath also ceased from his own works, as God did from his. Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. Because we're that people. We're talking about being that last generation, and the last generation of people to will be the group, that special group that is around and who survive and get victory over the mark of the beast. Hebrews 5 talked about the high priest, the Levite versus Jesus in the Melchizedek priesthood. Hebrews 6 encourages to go on to perfection. Hebrews 7 talks more about the Melchizedek priesthood because Jesus is called after the order of Melchizedek, as opposed to, and that's something that the psalmist says, because it was like David was prophesying that there's going to come a time where this man is going to come. He's not after the order of Levi. He's after the order of Melchizedek, the king of Salem, the king of peace. And we know that Jesus is our king of peace. So in Hebrews chapter 8, Paul says, Jesus is our high priest. And for us as Seventh-day Adventists, that's just such an important thing to remember. Jesus is interceding for us right now in the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary. And Hebrews 9 goes into the heavenly sanctuary. Hebrews chapter 10 goes over how the laws of sacrifices could not save. And so all that the sacrifices were, could not save us. And then he gets into Hebrews 11, which a lot of us refer to as the hall of faith. And those who exercised faith, it shows how they exercised faith. They were all, living righteousness by faith. The very first verse says, faith is the substance of the things hoped for, evidences of things not seen. And I always like to say that that's what faith is. You don't see it there. It's not that something is invisible, which implies that it's there, but you can't see it, but it's literally not there. But by faith, you believe that it is, and it comes to being. And so this is where it enters into what I'm really wanting to talk about, which is in Hebrews chapter 4. We are to look to Jesus by faith for salvation. He is the author and finisher of our faith. He is the Alpha and the Omega of our faith. Hebrews 12 verses 18 to 19 says, and 22 to 24 says, for ye are not come unto the mount that might be touched and that burned with fire, nor unto blackness and darkness and tempest. He's contrasting the Mount Sion with the Mount Sinai, where it was burning with fire. And the sound of a trumpet and the voice of words, which voice they that heard entreated that the word should not be spoken to them anymore. And you remember that part. They told Moses, tell God, don't talk to us. You talk to us. We don't want to hear God, because they were fearful and trembling. But ye are come unto Mount Zion, as opposed to that mount. You are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, or the first fruits. These words are so much related to the 144,000. It's like, I don't know about you, but it's exciting, which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, just men made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel. Remember when Abel's blood cried out? But this speaks to better things. And so he said something that just really brought this thought onto me. And I'm looking at the time, and we don't really have a lot of time. So I want to be able to put in the chat before we end, because I want to give time for the whole question and answer thing. I would like to present to you the 144,000, the great multitude, and them that got the victory. There are these three groups that are in Revelation that really sound similar. And so I'll just go really quickly over the characteristics of the 144,000. They are the servants of the angels, of the angels God. In other words, God's angels. These are the servants of the God of the angels as well, sealed in their foreheads, and that's in Revelation 7:3 and 4. John heard 12,000 from all of the tribes of Israel, are the part of the 144,000. They stand on Mount Sion with the Lamb. We just read about that in Hebrews chapter 12. They are gathered at Mount Sion. They have Jesus's Father's name written in their foreheads. They alone can learn and sing the new song before the throne. And that is Revelation 14:3. They were redeemed from the earth. So we know that they're The 144,000 are humans. They were redeemed from off the earth. And if you study this, you have to also remember that in chapter 6, at the end, the question is asked, who shall be able to stand? And it's referring to the time of Jacob's trouble. Everything is shaking. So this is speaking specifically about last day people who we believe we are. They are virgins, not defiled. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were redeemed from among men, the first fruits of God and the Lamb. They have no guile in their mouth, for they are without fault before the throne of God. The great multitude, their characteristics, John saw them. They're of all nations, kindred, tongue, and people. Like the first angel's message is sent out to all nations, kindred, tongue, and people. First angel's message started around 1844, 1848. They stand before the throne and before the Lamb, because these are God's last day people. They're clothed in white robes with palms in their hand. They cry salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. They came out of great tribulation. So these are people who are coming out of great tribulations. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Because of the previous, they are before the throne of God because they washed their robes. We always say the robes are characters, and they've been washed in the blood of the Lamb. So they're experiencing righteousness by faith. They serve God day and night in his temple. They shall hunger and thirst no more. The sun shall not light on them, nor any heat. The Lamb will feed them and lead them. God will wipe all tears from their eyes. And then there's them that had gotten the victory and their characteristics. They stand on the sea of glass. They have harps. They have harps of God in their hands, and they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb. And I just want to read this one quote before I end. It's actually coming from two excerpts of Maranatha, and I submit these two quotes for your review. We all entered the cloud together and were 7 days ascending to the sea of glass. Those who are victorious, that's the third group I just read about, they stand on the sea of glass with harps. When Jesus brought the crowns and with his own right hand placed them on our heads, he gave us harps of gold and palms of victory. According to what we read, those who have the palms are the great multitude. They're clothed in white robes and have palms in their hands. And yet the 144,000, it's talking about the 144,000 here. And they stood on the sea of glass. So, and they had gotten the victory. And these are characteristics coming from the three groups that I just mentioned. Some of them had very bright crowns, others not so bright. Some crowns appeared heavy with stars, while others had but few. All were perfectly satisfied with their crowns, and they were all clothed with a glorious white mantle from their shoulders to their feet. So they've got white robes on. Angels were all about us as we marched over the sea of glass to the gate of the city. Jesus raised his mighty, glorious arm, laid hold of the pearly gate, swung it back on its glittering hinges, and said to us, "You have washed your robes in my blood, stood stiffly for my truth. Enter in." We all marched in and felt that we had a perfect right in the city. As the people of God afflict their souls before him, pleading for purity of heart, the command is given, take away the filthy garments from them. And the encouraging words are spoken, behold, I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee, and I will clothe thee with the change of raiment. The spotless robe of Christ's righteousness is placed on the tried, tempted, yet faithful children of God. And if we just scroll down to where it's underlined, it says, these are they that stand upon Mount Zion with the Lamb, having the Father's name written in their foreheads. They sing the new song before the throne, that song which no man can learn, save the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits, or the firstborn is what's said in Hebrews, unto God and unto the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. And then here, this final portion of Maranatha, page 328. It says, and this is my favorite one. Upon the crystal sea before the throne, the sea of glass, as it were mingled with fire, so resplendent is it with the glory of God, are gathered the company that have gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name. This comes from Revelation chapter 15, talking about them that had gotten the victory. With the Lamb upon Mount Zion, so now the people that are with the Lamb on Mount Zion are the 144,000, according to Revelation 14:1. Having the harps of God, they stand, the 144,000 that were redeemed from among men. And there is heard as the sound of many waters and as the sound of a great thunder, the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sing a new song before the throne, a song which no man can learn save the 144,000. It is the song of Moses and the Lamb, a song of deliverance. None but the 144,000 can learn that song, for it is a song of their experience, an experience such as no other company hath ever had. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These, having been translated from the earth, from among the living, are counted as the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. These are they which came out of great tribulation. That's attributed to the great multitude. They have passed through the time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. They have endured the anguish of the time of Jacob's trouble. They have stood without an intercessor through the final outpouring of God's judgments. But they have been delivered, for they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. In their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before God. That's the 144,000. Therefore are they before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. They have seen the earth wasted with famine and pestilence. So the 144,000 get to see the earth wasted with famine and pestilence, the sun having power to scorch men with great heat, and they themselves have endured suffering, hunger, and thirst, but they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. And what I just read actually applies to the great multitude. So here we are seeing through the writings of Sister White that the great multitude, the 144,000, and them that gotten the victory over the mark of the beast, etc., they're all the same group, because they're that group that's going to be standing in when after Michael, according to Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, when he stands up and we don't have an intercessor, these are the ones that are going to stand through all of that. And if you read Maranatha, the very next page, I love it. Whoever compiled the quotes for Maranatha, page 328 and 329, made my work very easy. Because in 328, it talks about the 144,000. And then in page 329, it talks about the great multitude. And so check this last quote out. All classes, all nations, and kindreds and people and tongues will stand before the throne of God and the Lamb with their spotless robes and jeweled crowns. Said the angels, these are they that have come up through great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white. While the lovers of pleasures, more than lovers of God, the self-indulgent and disobedient, have lost both worlds. They have neither the things of this life nor the immortal life. The triumphant throng, with songs of victory and with crowns and harps, have trodden in the fiery furnace of earthly affliction when it was heated and intensely hot. From destitution, from hunger and torture they come, from deep self-denial and bitter disappointments. Look upon them now as conquerors, no longer poor, no longer in sorrow, in affliction and hated of all men for Christ's sakes. Behold their heavenly garments, white and shining, richer than any kingly robe. Look by faith upon their jeweled crowns. Never did such a diadem deck the brow of any earthly monarch. Listen to their voices as they sing loud hosannas and as they wave their palm branches of victory. Rich music fills heaven as their voices sing forth these words. Worthy, worthy is the Lamb that was slain and rose again forevermore. Salvation unto our God, which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. And the angelic host angels and archangels, covering cherub and glorious seraph, echo back the refrain of that joyous, triumphant song saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be unto our God forever and ever. What a way to end. So I just present to you that based on these phrases that Sister White, which is actually quoting about the three groups, the 144,000, the great multitude, and them that got the victory, I submit to you that us as Seventh-day Adventists need to have the message of righteousness by faith experienced in our own lives, because we are admonished to strive to be among the 144,000. And I submit to you, based on what I've read to you all just now, that there is nothing less than that we can strive for. We are either going to make up that number or we will be very sad. There are no other choices. To be in the 144,000, the great multitude / them that gotten the victory of that. This is us, because we see the signs of the times are everywhere. Jesus is about to come, and we are just entering into those beginning of sorrows, or I should say maybe even full swing in the beginning of sorrows, and are about to see the final scenes. I believe that we are between verses 42 and 43 of Daniel chapter 11. Pretty soon, the beast power is going to have control of all the finances of this world, and we're seeing it. Our president has just said that, has kind of put our financial situation on lock so that some people are not trading with us anymore. And so we are really getting ready to see all of this. And I believe that for our families, for the safety of our own families and the safety of our church family, we as individuals must get victory over sin. That's the best thing we can do for one another, is to get the victory, be like Jesus, and be ready for what's about to go down.